The 2025 Formula One season is this weekend. It begins officially with the Australian Grand Prix, the first Australian Grand Prix as the season opener since 2019. And honestly, I can say that this might be, maybe, as a fan of this sport for over 20 years, I'd say this is going to be the hardest season to predict. From what we saw, I'd say, after Canada of last season, all the way to literally the end at Abu Dhabi, this season, as far as the pecking order, the driver lineups, and not even just like the top grid, like the top 5 or 6 teams, all the way down to the back mark as well, this might be the hardest season to predict, simply because I have a feeling that now everyone has kind of caught up to Red Bull as far as their gap that they had in 2023 and the first 4 or 5 or 6 races in 2024 last season. But I think when we look back at last season, the main thing that really hindered Red Bull was their driver lineups. And you might say, you know, well, the car development as well, they kind of made too many mistakes with the car development as well, and they ran into issues that they really couldn't understand. And even they were winning races, you know, for example, Max was winning, you know, Max won Qatar, he had that excellent, you know, Brazilian Grand Prix last season as well. But you could tell that, you know, that car that Red Bull ended 2024 with was not the same car that began the season with. And it was clear that, you know, Ferrari and Mercedes and obviously McLaren, they had clearly caught up to Red Bull. So this season, as far as who is going to win, the drivers and the constructors, this is going to be the hardest thing to predict out of the entire season. So with less than 6 days until the first practice session in Melbourne, I'm here to give you my top 5 predictions, well, as far as who is going to win the drivers and who is going to win the constructors titles for this season. If you have your opinions as far as who you think is going to win the drivers and constructors and who's going to challenge and win races and cause upsets, leave your comments down below. I'm very eager to listen to your feedback and understand how everyone is feeling about this season, because this season, if everything goes to plan, this may be like a 2010 season where the title might get decided at the last race of the season, and there might be 2, 3, 4 drivers in the mix to win this. It can literally go anywhere. You know, I can definitely see a season where Leclerc, he wins his first title. You know, Lando Norris, he seems to be like the odds-on favourite this season, or even maybe George Russell after Hamilton's left, or even Lewis Hamilton. You know, the most unlikeliest of scenarios, I'd say, but it's possible. Anything is possible. So, without further ado, let's get started. Firstly, we're going to talk about the constructors, as far as who I think is going to win and really dominate the constructors. Now, we're going to go from 5th down to 1st. And I feel like starting with 5th also highlights the battle with the midfield. And I think that 5th and 6th place will come down to Alpine and Williams. I think Alpine do have a better car this year, and I think Gasly at the end of last season, he was really performing well. So far in preseason testing, the car, you know, it's been really decent as well, and hopefully with Jack Doohan at the wheel as well, hopefully Alpine can start to, you know, get some results under their belt, because the way that they started last season was a criminal offence, and they didn't really get their shit together until maybe Monaco, or even at the second half of the season, especially with that double podium. As far as Williams is concerned, Williams might be the team to look out for this season as far as the car, the driver lineups. Obviously, Carlos Sainz is now there with Alex Albon. I think they have, in my opinion, probably the top 4, maybe top 3 as far as driver lineups on the grid. And I think Carlos has been underrated for years. Even though he did have a kind of disappointing 2023, only winning the one race, and even having the appendix at the Australian Grand Prix and still winning. Yeah, as far as the other teams are concerned, I don't feel like there's any other teams that are going to compete for that 5th place other than Williams and Alpine. But I think for 5th place, I'm gonna go Williams, simply because of the driver lineup. I think Jack Doohan, it'll take some time for Jack to really develop as far as, being in that seat, and I think the pressure as far as being that second driver will really, I wouldn't say really get to him, but I think he will feel it. And I think as the season goes on, as we enter, Silverstone, Austria, Hungary, Spa, the midway point of the championship, I think Jack Doohan will start to get into his own. I think Gasly will pick it up straight away. But as we saw last season with Max, you can't win in the constructors battle with one driver. It's got to be both. And I think just the driver lineups, as far as Alex Albon, he's performing really well. He performed well last season, and with Carlos as well. I do expect multiple Q3 appearances from Albon and Carlos. I'm expecting Carlos to maybe get into Q3 for the Australian Grand Prix, and maybe Albon to follow him right behind. But I think when it comes to that battle between Williams and Alpine, I definitely think that the driver lineup, as far as which driver pairing is more stronger, more consistent, I definitely feel that Williams have the better drive lineup compared to Williams. So I'm going Williams as 5th place. Right, let's go. Top 4. Right, so Red Bull, McLaren, Ferrari, and Mercedes. Of course, McLaren ended last season as the strongest car, the best team. Lando Norris won the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, and many people believe that they had the strongest car. And I think when Lando looks back at this season, I think he will believe that, there was a lot of chances where he could have really done something different to really take the title, maybe down to the final race of the season. But this is anyone's. 4th place. Oh man, this is tough. I'm going to go Red Bull. I think it's too soon for Liam Lawson, because let's face it, Liam Lawson hasn't done a full actual season of Formula 1 racing yet. He only did I think it was a couple races in 2023, and then he did the second half of last season before getting promoted. I don't think he's truly ready, and I think he's going to suffer the same thing that everyone else has suffered when facing Max Verstappen. He's not driving his car, he's driving Max's, and clearly Red Bull are going to be listening to Max every step, every session, every race this season in order to make sure that Red Bull get the best. And they're not going to expect Liam Lawson, they're not going to develop the car around Lawson's needs. They expect Lawson to adapt to the car instead. And if that means he's going to get knocked out to Q2 or maybe Q3, or not make it to Q3 and finish, 7th, 6th place, the reality is, that is Red Bull, that's Max's car. Bottom line, Red Bull is Max's team, and I feel like Liam Lawson will have a bit of a hard time trying to break through that barrier as far as understanding the car and really get into it. I think Liam Lawson might have maybe a qualifying session or two where he does really well. Maybe he gets a pole position, or maybe he gets a really great race result. Maybe he starts 8th or 7th, and through great strategy and race pace, gets on the podium. Maybe even wins a race or two, maybe this season. Who knows? Maybe Baku or something, or maybe a weather changing race. We don't know yet, so we don't really know the full extent of Liam Lawson and what he can do at Red Bull. But I think this is going to be a similar season compared to last season, where Red Bull, they haven't really shown much in pre-season testing. They haven't really talked about, I don't feel like they're happy with their car and the progress that they've made compared to the other 3 teams on the grid. And I think if they were happy and content with the progress that they've made, they would have talked about it more. Maybe the sandbagging, who knows? We won't know until the first race of the season, of course, but just the general feeling is that I don't think Red Bull are happy with where they are right now before the first race, and I feel like they might start playing catch up in the first 2 or 3 races, especially when we get to, the Miami and the Spanish Grand Prix. So I think Red Bull, they're not going to win the Constructors this year. They're going to get 4th place. It's going to be a similar story. Max is going to carry the team while Liam Lawson gets used to the car. Max might win 3-4 races this season. I think Liam might win 1 or 2, depending on circumstances. I'm going to say maybe 5 pole positions, 4 for Max, 1 for Lawson. But I think Red Bull, I don't think this is the year where they're going to bounce back to win the Constructors. I might be wrong, but that's just how I feel. Right, 3rd place. Oh God, right. I'm going Ferrari. Oh God, Ferrari P3. I know that they had a tremendous car for races last season. They have a car. They finally understood their car now compared to 2 years ago, as far as race pace, tire simulations, the tire wear. They have a car that can manage the tires very, very well. Mexico, the United States Grand Prix, where they finished 1-2. They really came out strong in the races in the second half of the season. But I think in qualifying, their qualifying is they're not gonna match the Mercedes or the McLarens in qualifying. Again, the biggest news, the biggest headline is Lewis Hamilton going to Ferrari. And apparently, according to the news, Hamilton isn't really... I wouldn't say he's unhappy, but apparently, he's facing the same problems that he was facing at Mercedes. And again, it's going to be a question of how long does Lewis Hamilton, get used to that Ferrari. Because remember, he doesn't win properly until his 2nd season. You look back to his McLaren first season in 2007, he won a couple of races, and if certain things went his way, he could have won the title in his rookie season. Came back the next year, and we all know what happened. When he moved to Mercedes in 2013, he only had the 1 victory at Hungary, and then that was him done. And then the next year with new regulations, won the title in 2014. I could definitely see that scenario happening again, where this year is just a transition year for Lewis Hamilton. He's going to get 5 poles. I'd say 5 poles. He's going to figure out that car very quickly when it comes to qualifying. But as far as the race pace is concerned, I think, like Ferrari, I think he's going to just... I wouldn't say he's going to get eaten alive, but I think Charles Leclerc will get the better of him. I do expect Lewis Hamilton, once Hungary rolls around, to understand the car and fully understand what he's capable of. And I do expect Hamilton to win in Hungary if the car is, again, competitive. But yeah, Ferrari 3rd place. I feel like Charles Leclerc will... I think Charles Leclerc will have a good start to the season, but I think once the season enters the midway stage and entering, Singapore, and Qatar in towards that September-October range, I feel like Charles Leclerc will eventually, slowly but surely, back off of the Drivers' Championship. And I think the wait for Ferrari to win another Constructors will move on for another year. But again, these are just predictions. We won't know anything until the first race. But I don't expect Ferrari to be the odds-on favourites. And even though I do expect them to win, I'll say 5 races, 6 races. Hamilton to win in Hungary, and I think Charles Leclerc might win in Bahrain. Australia, maybe China, but who knows? I do expect maybe Leclerc to win in Monaco, but again, I think it's just going to be one of those cases where Ferrari are in the mix for wins, but they don't win, and if it's because of circumstances or reliability, I think they will slowly but surely fall off as far as fighting for another Constructors title. Right, the top 2 as far as the Constructors. Let's go Mercedes. I think, Mercedes, 2nd place. Kimi Antonelli. A lot of questions on his shoulders, especially after, his mistake, in his first couple of laps in Monza, the Monza practice where he crashed. But I think this is the year where George Russell breaks out. I think this is now the time where George Russell finally understands, this is my team now, no more driving in Lewis's shadow. I'm now the number 1 driver and I'm going to control it. And the question is always there. You know, Toto has now made it official in the Drive to Survive series that came out on Netflix that now he's open to talk to Max Verstappen. So who is to say that Max doesn't go to Mercedes in 2027 to partner Kimi Antonelli if George Russell can't do the business? So I feel like Mercedes now are expecting George to now really step up as far as lead the team and take the fight to the eventual Constructors champions, McLaren. All signs are there. Lando and Oscar, you know, I think they're probably the best driver pairing right now. The car apparently is better than it was last season as well, and they are apparently the odds-on favourites to win the Constructors this year. I could definitely see this being a dominant season, but I don't think that they will keep that gap for long like Red Bull did in 2023. I think the field's now too close to be spread, and also with the new regulations coming next season, I think, you know, I'd say Red Bull and Ferrari, they're going to be I think Red Bull might be, you know, already focusing on 2026, and I think Ferrari, once the second half of the season, you know, it comes, I think they will prioritize 2026 as well. I honestly think this might be a close constructors fight between McLaren and Mercedes, but again, it depends on how well McLaren start, and I think they'll have no problem executing team orders. I think Lando, unless he's in a close fight with his teammate, this is gonna be an interesting season for McLaren, because if they do have the best car and both Lando and Oscar are fighting for wins, how does the team go about it as far as determining who gets prioritized as far as team orders are concerned and strategy and stuff to that degree? But yeah, this is going to be a very interesting period as far as that relationship between Lando and Oscar, and we're going to really see now what that relationship is made of, especially if they have the best car. So McLaren, they do seem like the odds-on favourites to win the Constructors this year, but again, anything can happen. Maybe Mercedes catch up, you know, to McLaren, just like how McLaren did to Red Bull last season. But the bottom line is this, you know, McLaren are back on top of the Constructors. They want to do it again, and I think Mercedes might have only started to really understand these regulations right now, and I think Red Bull and maybe Ferrari have hit the ceiling as far as the Constructors. So Williams, Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes and McLaren to win the Constructors title. Right, McLaren to win the Constructors. Who is going to win the Drivers? Man, this is not really hard to predict. I need to get my notes out here, because again, anything can happen. Like, literally anything can happen. Top 6, I think Hamilton. I mean, I don't think I'm going to be accurate at all. It's just going to be one of those things where I'm going to go 6th place, Lewis Hamilton. Oh, I did have 5th place as Oscar Piastri, but I might swap that with... Oh god, who do I swap that out with? Maybe Antonelli? I don't know. You know what? I'm gonna go... Yeah, let's go Piastri 5th, Verstappen 4th, Leclerc 3rd, Russell 2nd, and I'm on the bandwagon. I think this is going to be the season where McLaren do the double. Lando Norris will be world champion this year. That is my prediction. That is my bet. That is what I am thinking. I think if he has a great start, the same way Verstappen does, as in winning the first 5, 6, 7 races, and even if he doesn't get pole position, and if they manage to maintain the gap as far as the best car, I think this could be Lando's season, to be fair, as long as they don't hit the same issues that Red Bull have had. But this is too close to call, man. I can't guarantee that anything will happen. I don't know. This is so hard. Lando to win. the drivers, McLaren to win the constructors, but we could be living in a world where George Russell wins where George Russell wins the drivers' title, or maybe Ferrari. Ferrari might be back. They've arguably got the best driver pairing on the grid with Leclerc and Hamilton, and it's all going to depend on when Hamilton fully adapts to that car. At the end of the day, we could be living in a world where literally Ferrari wins the constructors and there's an epic battle between both Ferraris, both Red Bulls, both McLarens, just like it was in 2010. And maybe the driver who doesn't lead the championship to the final race in Abu Dhabi wins the title. Let's say Oscar Piastri does, or George Russell, or even Kimi Antonelli does what Lewis Hamilton couldn't do in his first season. It's so open-ended. It's so open-ended, and I don't think any Formula 1 fan, regardless of what driver they support or what team they're supporting, I don't think anyone can confidently say, oh yeah, this driver's winning the drivers and this team's going to win the constructors. I think everyone will have a difference of opinion as far as, one constructor and a different driver. Maybe Ferrari win the constructors, but George maybe wins the drivers, or maybe Max wins the 5th world title and does something that only Schumacher and Fangio, the other two have done, as far as winning 5 consecutive drivers' world titles. But if Max wins somehow a 5th world title, this season is going to be the hardest season to win it on, because now he doesn't have the quickest car now. He does not have the quickest car. I think he has the 4th best car now. The 4th best, behind McLaren, Ferrari, and also Mercedes as well. And I think Red Bull won't be satisfied with their car all season long. But yeah, literally, Verstappen is going to have to really go for it this season if he wants to become only the 3rd driver maybe in the history of the sport to be a 5-time consecutive drivers champion. But anything can happen this season. This might be like 2010 all over again, to be fair, and I can't wait for it. I can't wait. Formula 1 is finally back. I'm going to watch Drive to Survive after this video is done, and yeah, the countdown is on. I'll be live on my Kick channel for live reactions for every practice, every qualifying, and every race this season. So if you want to watch along with us, then make sure you follow our Kick. Comment down below what your predictions are for the season. I'm very eager to know. And subscribe to the channel for instant reaction to every Grand Prix this season, because this is going to be the closest season I think the sport's ever seen. 4 teams, that can win the title. A lot of changes. Hamilton at Ferrari, Kimi Antonelli and Liam Lawson completing their first full seasons. You've got different storylines. Lando's story, Max trying to be a 5-time world champion, Lewis Hamilton's first, season at Ferrari. This is going to be a very interesting season, and I cannot wait to see how this plays out. Thank you for watching. Make sure to leave like, share, comment, and subscribe for more F1 2025 season coverage, and I'll see you after the first race in Australia. In a bit.